Today we're making herby brothy white beans with some garlic toast. You only need a few things to make it, and it's very versatile. You do need about an hour of cooking time plus some soaking time beforehand. At least 6 hours, ideally overnight. So let's look at the ingredients. So the star of the recipe are these dried white beans right here. These are cannellini beans, but you can use any kind of lighter colored bean that you can find. You can use navy beans, great northern beans, even yellow-eyed beans are good for this. So these are dried beans. You can use canned beans for this recipe, but dried beans are going to absorb the flavors much better and are also have a much nicer texture when cooked, especially in a recipe like this. Generally, I prefer dried beans for anything where you're not pureeing the beans. So unless it's like a hummus or some kind of dip, I think dried beans do taste much better, both flavor-wise and texture-wise. So we also have some fresh herbs, which in this recipe today we're going to use oregano, thyme, and rosemary, but you can use whatever you have on hand. You can use dried as well if that's all you have, but the fresh is going to impart a lot more flavor in this case. We have some vegetable stock. We do have some sea salt for later for the bread. We have some garlic to use in both the beans and the bread. Some ginger, a shallot. I have some kombu, dried kelp. I have some dried chili peppers, some bay leaves, and then a nice loaf of bread. This looks like a country-style loaf, but you can use a baguette as well. It all works great. Finally, some olive oil as well. So the first step of the recipe actually starts the night before, ideally, or at the very least a few hours before, which is to soak our dried beans, which you can see I've done over here in this small pot. And it's hard to notice a huge difference yet. You can see just after soaking with no cooking whatsoever, the beans have expanded a little bit, and the texture on the outside is starting to get more pliant. So that just helps the beans cook faster, and it also helps them absorb flavors as they should. There are other methods of soaking if you're strapped on time, or you don't even have to soak if you really drop the ball in that regard, and you'll just have to cook the beans for a longer amount of time, maybe close to 2 hours. So the first thing we're going to do, I am going to drain this water, and then I'm going to put it in a nice stock pot. I have this nice Dutch oven right here, which would work great, but you can use any large pot that you might have. And then we'll work on all of the aromatics and adding them in. Okay, so I'm going to drain these. That also helps wash them a little in case there's any dirt or something lingering. Okay. So those have been rinsed, and now I'm going to add them to our stock pot. And to get this to a boil as soon as possible, I'm going to start by adding the vegetable stock. The recipes I followed can kind of vary on how much to use. This is 4 cups. So we'll start with this, and then if we do need more later, we can just add it in. Or water. So I'm going to add the whole thing, and I'm going to start the boiling. Okay. And I will give it a stir. Okay, so now let's add some of our aromatics in. First I will add the kombu. again, our dried kelp, which is super high in glutamic acid, which imparts umami into things. It gives the beans a lot of flavor, and it also does help them, helps your body digest them better. So we can just nestle that in, you don't have to do anything. Also with the dried ingredients, I do have some dried chilies. You can use whatever you have. If you don't have them, it's fine too. These will also just impart a little bit of smokiness. And I'm going to do a chipotle and a bird's eye. We'll see what that tastes like. Okay, and now I guess I will add the herbs. So I'll just add a few sprigs of each of these. And you can just throw them in if that's all you have. I happen to have a little bit of cooking twine today, so I will tie them together in a bouquet garni, just so it's easier to take it out later. And again, this is super imprecise and can be whatever you have on hand. You can use tarragon, you can use sage, but these three are a good mix. And I'm just gonna very loosely tie a knot. Ideally you'd have a little bit more slack, but it's all good. And that goes right into the pot. Try to nestle a little bit. And then what remains, it's going to be real quick. So we have a shallot, and I'm just going to slice it lengthwise once. Give it a quick peel. Okay. And then you just throw the whole thing in like this and you'll retrieve it later. But it's going to release a lot of flavor, and it doesn't really, there's no point of cutting it up further because it's the same amount of flavor. And that goes also with the ginger. So you can just get any kind of piece of ginger, maybe about that size. They often say like a thumb of ginger. And with a spoon or whatever you have, I'm going to quickly peel it. But again, it is not very important. That also goes in. We have some loose garlic cloves here. I guess maybe I'll add 3 of them. These I'm just going to smash and peel. Okay. That comes right off. It's okay if there's some small bits that fall off. A lot of it will disintegrate into the broth, which will be nice. But the larger pieces you can always fish out later. Okay. Okay, maybe I'll smash this a little bit further. Helps release some of the flavors. The allicin, that gives it a lot of that garlic quality. I'll add 2 bay leaves as well. Forgot about those. And I believe that is it for now. There's as I said before, you can add all kinds of other things here. Whether it's herbs, some people would do like a Parmesan rind if you had one. There's vegan Parmesan rinds out there now, which you're welcome to add. Yeah, we'll add salt later. The beans actually will absorb the salt much better if they're already softened after they've been cooking for a little while. If you add them in at the beginning, some chefs would say that it spoils the flavor a little bit. So we're just going to wait till this gets to a boil, which is almost there, and then it's just a waiting game. It could be somewhere between 40 minutes and an hour. You just want to check the beans for doneness on your own time. Our broth has reached a simmer and is just bubbling away. Okay, so our beans are still simmering at a medium-low heat. You can see though that some things are starting to peek up from the top of the water line, which means now might be a good time to add some water or some more broth. So here's 2 cups of water going in. And we'll just get back to that boil by bringing the heat up a few notches. Okay, so it's been a little over an hour maybe since the beans have been boiling, and they're now tasting very close to done. I am going to let them go a little bit longer, and you can keep going as long as you'd like with these. They just get creamier and creamier, and they have a really nice, rich, aromatic flavor that should tell you that it's good enough to eat. Now is a good time to get rid of the aromatics, because you can see some of them have kind of started disintegrating and are just going to get harder to take out as you go along. So the kombu in particular is now very limp. Before it was extremely hard. It might have separated into a few pieces, so we'll just gather those. I got the bay leaves. I got the bouquet. The shallot, both parts. Oh, maybe another part came off. That's the chipotle that I put in. And we have at least one more thing in here. The bird's eye chili. Oh, right here. Okay, so now you can see it's just the beans, the broth, and there's a few little leaves of rosemary and thyme. And those are perfect just to leave in. Oh, and the ginger. The garlic might have actually disintegrated into there, and because of the color, it's kind of hard to distinguish the garlic from the beans. So you can just leave it. Oh, there's one. One final thing to do with the beans, now that they're just about done, now is the best time to taste for salt. So some of the stock you would have used would have salt, so that'll provide some of it. In this case, I have tasted it, and I'm going to add a little bit more. Maybe somewhere between a half teaspoon and a teaspoon, depending on how brothy your beans are and to taste. So I'll add that in. Could actually use even more. Yeah, that's much better. So because this is so creamy and rich, it's nice to balance it with something with a very crunchy texture. And for that we're going to do our garlic toast. So we have this Italian loaf, and I'm just going to do 2 slices for now, but you can do as many as you need for however many people you're serving. I'll just use that. Right. I'm going to turn on just a regular skillet. Put it on like medium-high. There we go. And just a small drizzle of olive oil in there. Definitely want to soak up some olive oil with our bread. I'm just going to cut 2 slices, 2 good slices for now. But again, as many as you need. I always love to do it on a bias. Okay, so I have those 2. Okay, so the skillet is now hot. I'm going to put these 2 slices of bread in, and I'm just going to give them a little stir to soak up some of the oil. And then we'll do a few minutes per side, maybe like 3 or 4 minutes. It's going to depend on the size of your skillet, it's going to depend on your stove, the size of your bread. So just try to like take a little peek every now and then. Probably this first side is going to brown better than the second side, and that's okay. But we're just going to give it about 3 minutes per side. Keep an eye on it. Alright, so our garlic toast is done. I'm going to turn the heat off here. And then carefully I'm just going to grab these out of the skillet. And as quick as you can, you want to give them some sea salt. I'll do that first. This is my sea salt flakes that you kind of crinkle in your hand as well. And I'll try to do both sides. And then also quickly, just take a raw clove of garlic that you've peeled and just rub it in. And the heat is going to just tenderize it a little bit, and the kind of the rough texture of the bread will break it down as well. And it'll kind of soak right in. This side will be a bit better. And needless to say, you can also do this just in a toaster with toasted bread, but of course you can't get the olive oil quite on it the same. But whatever you'd like to do. Okay, I'll do the other side, the other slice here. See, that's a bit better. Alright, so we are all set and we're ready to plate. So I'm going to turn off the heat on my beans. And again, those can continue to go for as long as you'd like. I mean, it's kind of hard to overcook beans. They just kind of get more creamy, and in this case that's what we like. They get more tender. So I'm going to spoon a scoop or 2 of beans. And I will try to get some broth. Now, quite a bit of this broth cooked down. Okay. And then I will just add my bread. Maybe spoon over a little bit of broth if I can get it. And we are all set. And you can serve it with a spoon. And yeah, you have a delicious bowl of beans with garlic toast for lunch, for dinner, for yeah, any occasion.